Okay, I think we're live. So, hey, how's it been going on your end?
It's been okay. I've definitely been really tired. I think there's been shifts going on, but I'm not sure.
Hmm. Interesting. I know, with me, I'm on the East Coast, and that hurricane was pretty close. So we narrowly, we got out of its way, and it actually turned out to be a big non-event for those of us that were north of the hurricane. Now, for the people that are from North Carolina on down, it's pretty tough. It's pretty bad stuff, but for a few days there, we didn't know if that thing was going to turn north on the East Coast. So it was a collective sigh around here, but I do feel bad, and my thoughts go out to everybody who are affected by it in North and South Carolina right now.
Me too. I've been watching the weather updates, and I was hoping that it wasn't too bad because they kept saying, "Oh, it's been downgraded," but then I heard about deaths that were related to it, so I know it must have been pretty bad.
Yes, I heard 4 this morning. And I don't know if that's going to go up. It may go up in time. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we are. I know that it's just sitting over the coast now, and it's expected to actually go inland pretty far and then veer north. So, hopefully that thing will die off pretty soon here. But so you were what's the deal with this Sunspot Observatory, or what's happening? What's going on?
I was looking yesterday at a couple of different videos about really strange activity going on in the Schumann resonance and in Earth's electromagnetic fields, and there's been some super strange data recorded going on around that. But I believe that the observatory is being shut down is to do with the SDO satellite. So the satellite observes the sun, and for some reason the website that displays the data from the satellite has been shut down, and the actual observatories that are connected to this solar satellite have been shut down as well. And the cause given was apparently some kind of safety or issues, but that doesn't explain as to why the website would be shut down. You know what I mean? All the data's been cut off, and nobody right now is quite sure. I mean, we can see the crazy data from the Schumann resonance. We're not sure what's happening with the sun right now, that we're not even allowed to see what's going on.
Yeah, and I know I've seen some footage of there's been some sort of magnetic anomalies going on too around the Earth as well, like big magnetic anomalies. Have you heard about that as well?
Yeah, I was watching some of the like data in the form of uh, what would you say, kind of a composition where the different spectrums are shown in different colors, and it
Yeah.
looked like big waves hitting the Earth.
Yeah, yeah. At first, I had heard for a little while, for a few hours, they were talking about, well, perhaps it was some sort of mass ejection from the sun, and it would be in the wave of a massive sort of, destructive wave over the planet of a sun ejection. And then they were saying that there'd be no way to cover that up with all of the observatories around the planet. However, it is kind of strange that they are starting to shut down more observatories.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, obviously no one's sure at this moment exactly what could be so crazy that you don't want people looking at the data, unless maybe there's just some huge wave and they're afraid people will panic if they see it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm trying to figure it out. With a wave, wouldn't pretty much every or at least half of the planet's observatories, wouldn't they pick up on something?
Yes, I don't know why it's these like specific like US observatories that are um, acting so strange. I think that some of them are tied in with NASA, and maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know why, because obviously, as
Yeah.
you're saying here, if the flare is that big, or if there's some kind of energy wave, or if there's something crazy like that going on, wouldn't all the other countries pick it up? Or have they signed agreements not to release information like that?
No, I know, I was watching Leak Project just before this show, and he had some footage of some kind of it looked like an artificial eclipse with one of the well, it claimed to be footage of one of official footage from one of the observatories, and it looked like some sort of eclipse going through the sun, and I don't know how much validity that holds. I'll have to look into that more. I'm looking now. The Daily Express's their headline is "Mystery Eclipse Captured by Closed Down Solar Observatory."
I saw somebody talking about that in a comment, and they said that, as it, like, I can't remember their name now, but they were independently trying to observe this. I'm not sure how, but they were saying that it seemed to be like an eclipse, but they couldn't explain it as no eclipses were scheduled or expected or anything like that. But it seemed to be
Yeah.
kind of along those lines. And I was like, that's pretty strange.
Yeah, and I saw the footage on Leak Project, and it was strange. It was strange looking, and you could tell that it wasn't natural. Whatever it was that was going in front of the sun. Now, whether or not it's a hoax or not, that can be debated. But certainly, that object, it was a round object, and it was not a natural looking object. I mean, it looked as if it was round, but they are. You could tell that it was something that was not naturally made. It was made with some sort of, sentient sort of intelligence. It was very odd.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I thought people were saying about that it could be the moon or some kind of, like, naturally occurring large object that was causing interference. But I don't, I think even if there was an asteroid or something passing by, it wouldn't cause this kind of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say what it was round, but it was dark. So, and it was going over, the sun. So the sun, it was, red and orange, and there were things, coming off the surface. So you had this very natural looking thing, the sun that we're all used to, and then just this blunt, sort of dark circle, almost like the circles you would see in Google Hangouts, just kind of go over this thing. And it almost looks, you wonder where this footage is coming from because it looks so unnatural.
Exactly. I'm baffled by this whole thing. I was just, trying to check on the Schumann resonance to see if it would give me any indications about the shifts, because we've been
Mhm.
shifting twice as much as normal, and they've been really weird shifts. Kind of like, not, usually how we get like a big shift, but we get kind of tapered shifts
Mhm.
either side around 3 days or so. It
Mhm.
seems to be kind of like mid-sized spikes of shifts twice as often, which is a
Oh,
different pattern, and it's really weird.
that's odd. I know I've stumbled on this new small channel. Let me find it real quick. And he has an interesting perspective on, and I've only watched maybe 2 or 3 of his videos, so I'm not vouching for the channel. I'm just saying that I've watched 2 or 3 of his videos. It's called Dale Dufay, and he's got like 300 followers, so it's a small channel. And he was talking about this idea of us jumping, of souls jumping from body to body to body. So rather than us shifting, that there's a I don't know how many planet Earths there are, maybe an infinite number of planet Earths. And then you become sort of conscious as you inhabit the bodies. And then as a shift happens, you move on to another Earth. That's sort of like this one. It kind of is in line with, sort of in line with some of the theories we've talked about with those shifts. It's just his way of putting it was kind of interesting. And like he talks about parallel lives and the Mandela effect, Earth's soul and the Mandela effect, spirituality and the Mandela effect. And then he was talking about a geoshift that he remembers from the movie The China Syndrome. And do you know anything about that movie?
No, I don't.
Well, it's a movie from I think like 1980 or something like that, and the fear was that a nuclear facility would melt down, and as it melts down in Los Angeles, the idea behind the China syndrome was that it would melt down all the way through because of gravity till it got to the Earth's core, and then actually come out at the other end. And by doing that, you obviously would do, untold damage to the planet. And that's they actually made a movie on it. But the point he was trying to make about China syndrome was that the Earth that he was on before, the US and China were literally at opposite ends of the globe. So that's what the name and what the movie I think it was Faye Dunaway. It was somebody like that from the 70s. And The idea was the US and then China were literally on opposite sides of the planet. So if something were to react and to melt down, you literally could go to the other side and come out of China at the other end. And now because he was saying because we're have so many geo shifts go on that China now is nowhere near on the exact opposite side of the US. And that sort of plays into why the Pacific Ocean is so big and why everything in terms of Europe and Africa and they seem to be scrunched together. And the Atlantic Ocean is almost like a sea now. It's not really an ocean anymore.
That's true. I remember when they used to say that. I can hear
Yeah.
my voice really loud in your background.
Oh, really? Let me try to sorry, let me try to fix that. Here, is that any better?
Yeah, that's way better.
Okay, cool. It's sometimes I've learned that if I have the volume up and I have the mic too close to the actual machine, it causes kind of a reverb on the other side.
Um, I'm just so like confused by just all the recent stuff that's happening. I mean, yes, he makes a valid point there because I remember when they used to say, "Oh, you drill through the earth, you'll end up in China on the other side." And yes, China is not the same shape or the same size or the same location, and neither is the United States. So I guess all of those things are no longer valid, which is very strange to say that we outlived that concept, but we did. And then the latest piece of information I have here about the SDO satellite is saying the New Mexico Observatory and the post office was shut down by the FBI on September the 11th.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So I'm just like, I didn't know they even shut down the post office as well. That's really crazy stuff right there.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm going to remain skeptical in thinking that, it may be something that's limited to because I was just now Googling trying to find more if there were more observatories that they could name that were actually shut down. And at least in the top news from Google, it still remains, just that one particular observatory. However, if it's something that they spotted and it was a single event in terms of it you being a UFO, then I could understand why it would only be that observatory, particularly if that UFO was staying in a localized area. But everything here, including Nick Pope, and I retweeted his tweet saying, no, it's not a UFO. So that was kind of strange and interesting.
That is weird. I'm seeing Leak Project says 5 observatories closed, but I don't know if he names them or not. And I'm not sure I haven't done a Google search, so I don't know what Google's reporting or not reporting. But yeah, it seems to be difficult to get a hold of the information that's going on.
Yeah, because I Googled just observatory shut down. I tried to keep it kind of vague. And, they've got the Kansas City Star, the Express, Gizmodo, Science, Independent Journal, even Albuquerque KOAT7, and it still seems to be centered around this particular observatory. I don't. There's no articles, despite what Leak Project says, around multiple observatories. I still can't. At least I can't find any on Google.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any in the description of his video.
Yeah,
So I imagine if that information was there, he would that would be like the first thing he would put up, but it doesn't seem to be.
yeah. And then yeah, I love these titles here. Aliens ruled out as cause of the FBI Observatory shutdown. It's like, okay, like we're gonna just believe that.
I have no idea what to think about this. It
So
just
what's your general feeling on aliens? They've been kind of out of fashion. You know, they were the thing about 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, until basically this, at least for me, the Mandela effect sort of took everything, swept everything else to the side. What are your feeling on the you know, aliens?
I'm really not sure. As in, like, I've seen weird, unexplainable stuff around Mount Shasta, with my own eyes, but I still don't connect on any level to the alien thing. And I'm not sure why, but I think that just some people are more drawn to different phenomena than others. So I'm not going to say, oh, there's nothing there, but I will say that if there is, it's not really something that I have discovered a lot about or have gone really in depth in.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I mean, I don't know. I think it's suspect, and this is coming from me that I st the problem I have with the UFO thing and the problem I have with aliens in general is the general consensus with the at least mainstream UFO, if that's sort of kind of a contradiction in terms, the mainstream UFO conspiracy community, they kind of go with the idea that there's no spiritual component. And there's some fringe thought out there that there is a spiritual component to aliens. And for me, everything that I've heard about aliens, there seems to be something incredibly spiritual about aliens. And I always wonder if they're not, from outer space, if they're from here, just kind of breaking through barriers and reaching out to us, if indeed they do actually exist. That's sort of my thought on it.
That kind of reminds me of the Mandela effect I saw yesterday. People talking about the fourth Indiana Jones movie, how the title had changed, and actually there was a couple of different sets of timelines, like people saying what they remember the title being. So that was pretty interesting. But that was kind of the storyline around that one, that the aliens were more interdimensional and that it was kind of more of a spiritual thing, that they were worshipped by ancient cultures, and in this movie. And I wonder if there is some kind of component in that respect. But like, space is so unknown to us. Like, even with all of our technology now, I would have thought, remember how everyone said, oh, in the year 2000, they'll have their own personal spaceships and everything will be so futuristic. I thought there'd be hotels on the moon by now. I thought there'd be all kinds of, space expansionism, and there isn't. Space is still a big mystery to us, even now.
I mean, yeah, it just goes to show you how we've fallen so short that there's actually arguments about the flat earth. Just that alone tells you where we are in terms of what our expectations were 20, 30 years ago to where we're actually at now. It should have been self-evident that the earth is a ball screaming through space, and that all of us should be on the big space elevator going up to Mars, where we get to have, dinner and then, jettisoned back to Earth. I'm with you. When I was a kid, that was my idea. If you would have told me, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the year 2018 or the year 2020? I would have said, oh, we would have had, at least Blade Runner vehicles where we could just kind of, hover through magnetic means or whatever, all the way up into like the, space.
It's so strange that that didn't materialize. And I don't know if it's because, for whatever strategic reasons, they want to keep space completely private, or if we actually can't get there because of the Van Allen belts, like NASA themselves were saying, because of the radiation, or if there's some other crazy reason that we're not being told.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it's obvious it doesn't help the case, especially with flat earthers, that the as they call them, the globalists or the globular proponents, there seems to be a bit of secrecy around what they're actually seeing out there, because I personally, I don't want the Earth. My personal feelings are a bit emotional because of the way that I was raised. I don't want the Earth to be flat. I want us to be able to do a Star Trek kind of thing in the future and explore the unexplored, and that, it's an infinite space out there for us to go out. I personally, just emotionally, I don't want to be stuck in what's described in the Bible. I don't want to be stuck in a firmament where it's kind of just a glass bowl that we're in. So, I wish NASA would just do what people are saying, is give us, show us more Earth shots, which we don't see. They're composites, especially that famous Earth shot I was so disappointed to find out that it was data that was rendered. It wasn't an actual shot of the Earth. It was data that was rendered, and there were actually slices of the Earth that were actually missing, and they had to interpret that through Microsoft Paint or something real basic. And that, just look, man, you've got supposedly tens of thousands of satellites. Turn one of the cameras around at Earth, at one of those distant satellites, and like the pictures you take of Saturn and of Europa, do that with Earth, and let's just end this thing right now. But they haven't done any of those things.
Yeah, I was not impressed when I found out about the blue marble as well, and saw that they actually had the clouds, like the exact same clouds, copied and pasted over and over. And I was like, if you're getting $52 million a day tax money, I expect a really good composite. Like, you don't want something that somebody had like a little cloud stamp on Photoshop or something and just put together kind of, whatever on the fly. Like, what are you getting paid for then? What's all this money going to?
Right, right. And that goes to another thing, a more practical matter. What is that money going to? And it seems to be where our technology is diminishing. And it's like, we used to be able to get to the moon. We used to be able to do all these things. And it's almost as if, well, they've actually admitted it. We've lost that technology, which I to this day, I'm not understanding that statement. How do you lose the technology? How did you not get backups of the trajectory data and all those things, all the math? I mean, I don't understand.
I don't know, because if you remembered you lost the technology, surely you could replicate it. But if it was something like a Mandela effect where it all disappeared, then those people wouldn't remember that they had the technology in the first place.
Well, or they don't know about them. Now, that you brought up something here. They don't know about the Mandela effect. A shift happened. We didn't go, but there's some of us that remember us going, and they can't account for why the technology doesn't exist. So they make up the story that, look, we lost the technology, versus we had a Mandela effect. See, the Mandela effect can account for so many odd things. And this is a perfect example. They were shifted. They don't know about the Mandela effect. They say, "Hey, where's the data that, and the math and everything that got us there? Oh, we lost we lost all the data. All the data is gone. All the schematics, everything about it is gone." Well, what do you mean it's gone? They don't have the language to say, "Oh, we had a Mandela effect shift, and in this new world we never went, and only some of us remember." And then the actual hard or physical items, just like we don't remember about Andy Warhol being on the moon, we don't remember us not going.
It's so weird though that they would remember, because I would expect if there was a shift that people in the public would remember, but the actual people who worked on the projects wouldn't. Because a lot of the times when you're really close to something, you don't see the effect like someone who's a little bit removed from it. So I can never figure out what this situation is. I can't figure out if it's some kind of wild scam where they're just like getting enormous amounts of money that's just disappearing and actually nothing is getting done, or if we were making great headway in space and something crazy like that happened, and now we're decades behind where we were in the 60s, like we can't get there. It's kind of inexplicable, because this is the future we all talked about. This is way past 2000. This is 2018, and we're actually nowhere closer. Our cell phones are better and everything, but that's about
And
it.
that's just the thing. I'm a computer guy, and I can tell you, man, the way that chips worked back then versus now, and the fact that a chip, The computing power on the planet Earth had less power than that is in one phone right now. And yet that computing power got us to the moon and back. To just to me personally, it doesn't work. It's just and I need for and the fact that we can't replicate that adds to that argument. And then all the other strange occurrences too, the fact that they openly admit that we haven't been through the Van Allen belts. The astronauts, they say they don't remember if they went through the Van Allen belts. And then you have, I think it was Buzz Aldrin talk that famous footage recently where he's talking to the little girl saying, "Well, we didn't go to the moon." Did you see that one?
I did. I saw that one, and I just thought it was the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, and then obviously there's all the mysterious deaths around NASA in that time period. There's a lot of stuff that it needs to be cleared up. And I almost got a feeling, just my gut feeling is that something else is going on that's like we're missing something in the calculation here of why they're not they're I think we can all come to the agreement that regardless of what we think, they're not being 100% upfront with us. It's just a matter of what is it about this particular subject they're not being upfront, especially with the astronauts. And then they're allegedly in space, but they almost drowned because water seeps into the helmet. And they said that it was a system inside there that they almost drowned and they weren't in a pool. And, it's just strange.
I've seen the footage of like bubbles and things floating up, that they're supposedly in space, but they're actually in the training swimming pool and just like silly things like that. And I have no idea what to think of it. I mean, I suppose on a broader scale, it's difficult to know what to think of anything anymore. But I'm just like, I really hope that's not the situation, that you guys are in your training facilities and somehow either everyone's in on it or the astronauts actually think they're in space but they're not, or like who even knows what the heck is going on with this situation.
Absolutely. And there's all these other little side conspiracies. Like, have you ever heard of this thing called the ether?
Yeah, Nikola Tesla used to talk about that, or write about that rather.
Right. So I just found out about this the Sagnac experiment this week. Have you? I didn't know about it. Have you ever heard anything about this?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So the deal is with the Sagnac experiment, and I need to do a lot more research on it. But on its face, the Sagnac experiment, what they meant to do was show that there is ether, and basically ether is the idea is it's this substance that's where the nothingness is. Meaning, if you're in a room and it's full of what you just think is nothing, and then you're in there, and you go outside and there's an open field and there's more there's this idea that there's this substance out everywhere called the ether. And if there is an ether, then somehow it invalidates the theory of relativity. But the Sagnac experiment, they've apparently tried to muddy the water with it. And what they did was they took a series of mirrors, and then they took, I think, light. And what they did was they had here it goes, the Sagnac effect, also called the Sagnac interference, named after French physicist Sagnac, is a phenomenon encountered in. Okay, hold on. Let me open it up. Ba, 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 ba. A beam of light is split, and the two beams are made to follow the same path but in opposite directions. On return to the point of entry, two light beams are allowed to exit the ring and undergo interference. So what happens is these two lights, they're set under a series of mirrors, and they're bounced off the mirrors all at the same time. And the theory is that they come back home, at the same time. And what they do is while they're doing that, they slowly rotate to one side while these beams of light are being bounced around inside of this enclosure. And the idea is if there's not any ether, that the beams of light should come home where they were sent out from at the same time. The problem is that they didn't come back at the same time. They came back at different times. And the idea is one was facing more resistance from the ether as this this sort of enclosed area was being turned or something like that. Hope I'm not completely butchering this. But yeah, it talks about the angular velocity, and it's incredibly interesting, and it goes back to the idea of science trying to lay down the law and it being one way. And there's so many other experiments that are out there if you stumble on them. And I was reading when I first watched the video, there were people talking about this one guy was like a physicist for 30 plus years. He did his PhD thesis on the theory of relativity, and he said he had just heard about the Sagnac effect or the Sagnac experiment like 3 years before, and he was just infuriated that that was left out as part of his formal education. And so many other of whenever I watch this video, so many of these people were so incensed about it, and it's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, when we talk about muddying the waters, for sure, like Einstein really regretted that his work basically brought around this idea of unconnected systems. So previous to that, all systems were considered to be connected, whether it was gravity or things happening in space or on Earth, or every system was thought to be a microsystem under a bigger system, and that everything was connected to everything else in some way. And then Einstein's theory of relativity was like, oh no, there's unconnected systems that don't affect each other and they just operate completely independently of each other. And it kind of brought an end to the ether being part of the academic norm. And they said that actually Einstein deeply regretted that, and he tried to take it back in his later speeches, and it was too late. Like, he'd already opened the box on that one, opened the Pandora's box on it. But it's one of the reasons why Einstein is pushed so much and Tesla is so ignored, because Tesla understood the value in the etheric systems. That's how he was able to, get his wireless systems up and running way, way back in the day. And if they had implemented a lot of Tesla systems, then we wouldn't have bothered with all this, the wires and all the Edison stuff that has basically slowed down a lot of progress.
That's an interesting phrase. What if we're intentionally, kind of taking our foot off the pedal and slowing down progress because we're coming to like the average person like you and I, um, we have the power now to do our own experiments and kind of undo a lot of theories that are kind of sacred cows in the scientific community. What if we could be 100 years ahead of where we were? Like I said, I could jump into a pod and shoot to Mars for dinner with an alien landscape, and then jump back in my pod and come back because it is the year 2020. Well, like what we expected when we were kids. But what if they are easing off the pedal to slow down technology on purpose to prevent us from unveiling something? And I know flat earthers are talking about the firmament, and there's a million other people might think that there's a mothership hovering over Earth, or that the moon is hollow, the Earth is flat, or the Earth is hollow. The Earth is whatever shape you want it to be. But what if one of those happened to be right, and we keep edging towards this technology that's going to get us to where an average person that just knows basic math can figure out what's going on?
I have heard of, I forget his name right now, it's on the tip of my tongue, this engineer that worked for Ford that was using these different technologies that aren't pushed to make cars that could run on water and cars that could run on like Tesla etheric systems. And he got them to work, and he drove across the United States, and he was pressured into signing non-disclosure agreements, and he didn't want to. And I think in the end they just killed him. So anyone that, on their own goes forward with these technologies after studying them and actually puts them into practical application, it's either non-disclosure, sign up with us, or you're going to have an accident early, because this is not allowed to be in the public domain at this point in time for reasons we don't understand. We don't know if there's some reason why we have to be kept in the dark on these things, or if it's, what we would suspect it to be is greed. I mean, it's obviously a lot easier to deal with a population that has to pay for gas, that has to pay for electricity, that presumably with carbon offset laws becoming more stringent, you're going to be taxed per mile that you drive in the future. The more you can make people pay, the more you're taking time from them. Like, oh, they need to work more hours to pay for more stuff. But if you have a car that just runs on electricity that comes out of the ether and you don't have to pay for that, how are they supposed to control you?
Absolutely. And as far as that guy, I don't know if we're talking about the same guy. I remember seeing on early YouTube, I mean, like more than a decade ago, there was a guy, he poured water into his engine and he got up in the car and he drove off. And it was like a Ford truck or something. And the guy drove off. And sure enough, he was dead about a month or two after that he had allegedly shot the video.
Yeah, that one's apparently it's one of those don't touch that subjects.
And that's another theory too out there, that oil isn't, it's infinite, that the earth produces oil like the body produces blood. You just have to take it out in certain increments. And that there's a whole, body of thought out there about oil and oil. If you keep oil where they think that there's going to be peak oil or a finite amount of oil and oil will eventually run out, then you can control cost and you can control how you extract it. But some people think those earlier wells that we drew from, that we thought were dry long, long, long ago, back in the 19th century, in late 19th and early 20th century, those wells are full again of oil. Some people claim.
I think there was a Mandela effect about oil now that we're talking about this, because I remember they struck a massive reserve of oil in Texas. It was like last year. And it was so big, it was going to offset the prices. And I don't know if we've shifted away from that timeline and that's no longer happening, or if literally they're just like put a cap on the Texas oil because we want to buy the oil internationally because, markets or strategy or whatever the situation may be. But after hearing about, oh, we've struck all this oil and it's going to be amazing and your gas is going to be so much cheaper, then it was all kind of hushed up and out of the news, and then nobody talked about it again. So I don't know what the situation is with that, but it would have changed a lot of things, obviously financially, for a lot of, everyday people. I don't know why that was pushed to the side.
Yeah. And it's a very, well, we create the system. When they talk about the Fed, they openly admit that the Fed creates the business cycle artificially, which is the boom and bust cycle. And they talk about, if you listen to really close, when they talk about Feds playing with the interest rates, they talk about a soft landing. And what they're talking about is engineering a crash. And what the dream is for the Fed to engineer a crash to where it's not actually a crash, it's actually a slow. They engineer the recession that it's very gentle so people don't feel it. And what they want to do is they engineer it so people don't feel it, and that way there won't be there'll be a way to permanently, and they think they've gotten to that point now where they can permanently depress wages. And we've actually had a boom cycle and none of us are feeling it because our wages have been, in this last cycle, they've been depressed because we all don't feel it. But they said that we've had a roaring economy now for like the last 7 or 8 years. And we're about to actually go back into another recession because that's the business cycle that they've created through the Federal Reserve. And that's actually how it really works, and how they actually want it to work is to engineer these boom and bust cycles, and to have wages permanently depressed and have inflation march on, and having wages kind of paired to that inflation, never going above that inflation, is what they're aiming for with the Fed, because that's the ultimate way for them to continue pocketing because the Federal Reserve is about as Federal Express. That's the old expression, for them to continually pocket the interest that the U.S. pays through its T notes to the Federal Reserve to borrow that money, because the Federal Reserve creates fractionary money out of nowhere, and then the banks and everybody borrows from the Federal Reserve, which is a private organization, and then the government gets an unlimited line of credit that it has to pay back that interest based off the T notes that it produces itself. So the government has the power to produce its own treasury bills. but it doesn't have the power to produce its own money. The Federal Reserve does that, and that's a private bank, and that's a private, actually, banking system. And then all systems are connected into the Federal Reserve. And whenever you go to borrow money, that money doesn't actually exist inside of, let's say, the system of Bank of America. They make up that money out of nowhere. And then how it becomes legal is they determine what interest rate that you're going to pay, how much they're supposed to take, and then how much the Federal Reserve will take out of that. The Federal Reserve then takes that fractionary money, they incorporate it that you've created into their systems, and that's how they get their calculations.
Oh, it's true. And it's even more so than ever. All this cash that we're talking about doesn't actually exist. Like, I was along for the ride with someone who was buying a luxury car some years ago, and they went to get the money out cash from the bank, and they literally had the money in their account to buy this big fancy European car. And they were just going to go down to the dealership, just buy the car straight out. And the bank said, oh, we only have $5,000 at any given time. It's going to take a week for us to order in the money. So even though you actually have the money, you can't get it. Too bad. And that's when we learned, like, wow, they're not keeping any cash in the bank anymore. It's literally just ones and zeros on the computer.
Yeah, and I know that if it's anything over $9,999, they have to actually report you to the FBI or some federal body. It might be the SEC. I don't know. I think it's the FBI. At 10,000 and above, they've got to report you, almost like you've committed a crime, and they will come and they will investigate and make sure, that you actually, are above board or whatever, and that's their excuse why you can't take your own money.
I mean, yeah, why would you want to have your own money? And how dare you have like $10,000 to yourself?
Right.
I'm sorry to sound cynical, but like the fact that you would be reported for having money, like having money outright, shows exactly the kind of system you're dealing with, where your credit rating is good if you're a good debtor. You don't get good credit by actually earning the cash and buying something outright. What you need to do is be in debt, but show that you're good at being in debt and you always make your payments, and then you're highly valued. So if you're a good debtor, awesome. If you actually have your own money, you're not useful because you're not in debt.
Absolutely. Did you ever hear that weird story about Don Johnson, the actor from Miami Vice?
No, what was that?
So it's a couple years back, and I'm not going to Google it. I'm just going to go off memory, and everybody can Google it afterwards. But it was some wild story. He was caught in the border of two European countries, and I'm going to make them up. I think he was going from Switzerland into France, or France into Switzerland, or something like that. But they pulled his car over at the border, and he had something like $3 billion in T-bills in the car, and they were like freshly printed, and they were like in suitcases. It was almost like he was like moving money around for like major kingpins or something. I made that all up myself, but it was a weird story with John Johnson. Yeah, the guy from Miami Vice. It is the weirdest story. And they actually had to hold him because the amount of money. And then the story kind of disappeared. And it was the weirdest thing.
That is super, super strange. I mean, I do know that there are laws that, if you have too much cash, even if you can prove that it's yours and it's not any kind of a bad situation, if you have too much cash on you or in your car, it can be seized and basically never returned to you. So you have to use their banking systems.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, well, I've saved this for, a year or 5 years or something, and I want to, I'm moving and I want to bring it with me. They're like, nope, that needs to be in a bank and transferred wirelessly. You can't have it with you, or, I have the right to take it. Too bad.
Here it is. The story behind Don Johnson's mysterious $8 billion briefcase. Oh, I love it. So it says, it's Switzerland and Germany border. About the time Don Johnson was stopped at the Switzerland-Germany border with $8 billion in his car. Don Johnson was a few years removed from the finale of his most recent TV hit, Nash Bridges, and more than a decade past his 80 hit Miami Vice, when a routine customs check on the Switzerland-Germany border turned into an ordeal he would later describe as, quote, one of the most difficult weeks of my life. Blah blah blah. But they're talking about him battling drug dealers in his show. But in November 2002, it was Don Johnson who found himself in the subject of an investigation and a storyline that resembled one of the narratives he would routinely partake in during the run of his Golden Globe-winning TV series. Johnson, along with two other men, his personal assistant, and an unnamed Swiss financial advisor, were stopped by German custom officials as they made their way into the country by way of Switzerland. Everything seemed legit. Customs agents were even fans of Johnson. I signed some autographs. We joked around, he told Larry King in 2003. The seeds of trouble for Johnson were sitting in the trunk of the car. When officials searched it, they discovered a briefcase with over $8 billion in receipts, certificates, and credit notes. It seems a bit odd. Johnson explained that the paperwork was from investors he was in the process of collaborating with for his film production company. Now, hold on a minute. 8 billion? I mean, the most rip-roaring Marvel slash whatever movie out there, they basically high-five each other when they make 100 million. This guy has 8 billion, and it was 17, 16 years ago.
I think the key element right there is the unnamed Swiss advisor.
You think?
Yep. There's a reason why he would remain unnamed. He's too important to be dragged into anything scandalous. And 8 billion is nothing in Switzerland. That's where people stash all their money. The entire financial system is different there.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking to myself, Hollywood practically pats itself on the back whenever, they talk about a movie making 100 million. That's a fraction of this, what we're talking about.
True. That's why I think it was more towards whatever the Swiss advisor's purposes were, because that's obviously a lot bigger than any movie you would be financing. There's got to be a much bigger deal in play.
And it sounds to me like that they had very complicated financial instruments in this guy's trunk, which is not usually where you keep something like this. It's usually a vault, not somebody's trunk.
True. And also very strange.
So this just adds to the overall mystery. There's so much we don't know. That's the point of me pulling that out, is this goes back to the NASA thing, to the everything else. It's just, there's so much out there. We have no idea. I'm frustrated because I would love to know a glimpse of this, but I know it would probably cost me my life because I'm just a regular person.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much is actually safe to know about this kind of stuff unless you actually join that element, and I don't think you'd enjoy that either.
I know, given some of the rumors out there. I mean, look at it this way. You can have stuff shut down. You can be absolutely, basically ejected from the internet, via Alex Jones, if you actually even talk about certain things, let alone trying to investigate something like this.
I know, and especially if you're going to investigate people that are driving around, haphazardly with 8 billion in the trunk, I don't think that it's going to be a very fair fight, because money moves everything in this system.
I know, it's crazy. Can you believe what time it is already?
I can see that it was, yeah, that's a very quick 50 minutes right there.
I know, right? I know. But yeah, I mean, as far as NASA goes, I'm still wondering about the diminishing returns on our technology. And, there's a lot of people out there who say everything we have right now, they've, they had in basically the 50s and the 60s, and they've only rolled it out to kind of a commercial, application of it, and that the military has had it the whole time. So really, we haven't actually seen any real jumps in technology and that we know of as a public in more than 30 years. And it's kind of strange if technology, I mean, what if the way civilizations disappear, because we don't know how like if there was an Atlantis, how advanced something like an Atlantis was, how advanced Rome actually was, how advanced the Egyptians were. What if, the way in which things sort of decline, it's not something blunt, and there's not sort of Vikings at the gates, that it's some sort of mysterious way that technology extracts itself from this realm. And that's what we're experiencing. And that, the wave is already crested, so to speak, on technology. And we once could get to the moon, but that's no longer possible because that technology is just gone into the ether.
I think that there were a lot of things that we were able to do long ago, and I think that actually this constant narrative that we're getting that, oh, we're the most advanced we've ever been and all the people before us were just Stone Age people that weren't able to do anything. There were obviously eras that were very low technology, that were more Stone Age, but I think there were peaks and valleys when it came to what we were able to do technology wise and what was accessible to us technology wise. And I think that those things have changed and shifted between different ages. I think that the ancient people did have amazing technology, because look at some of the architecture that survived. There's things that we can't build now, stones that look laser cut that are way too big for anyone to carry or to move, way
I
before
love that
supposedly
stuff.
they had any vehicles. So I'm thinking a lot of what we're being told is just complete nonsense. I don't know if it's, deliberate or if it's Mandela affected and just all the mainstream people don't remember, they don't remember anything, they don't know where they are. And I would be open to believe that because they don't notice the geo shifts every week and a half. So how would they know anything about history?
Exactly. Hey, I was just glancing before we go here. I was just glancing, and Dr. Lenny Time, he's given us an open invitation to go on a show again. You wanna go on there again?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. So I don't know. Hey Lenny, I don't remember how we got a hold of you last time to kind of shore up when we can all get together. But if you have our email, or if you can get a hold of me through Twitter or however you did with us, yeah, man, if Chick's down with it, I'm down with it. I'd love to go on and hang out with you again. So just get a hold of us, and we'll definitely go on your show. I had a good time.
Lenny says he sent himself, his past self sent money that he received. That's pretty
Oh
cool.
wow. Yeah, we can quantum jump to any timeline we desire. Wednesday, sure. Yeah, Wednesday on Discord. Yeah. Yeah, Lenny, I mean, that works for me. If it works for Chick, it's.
Yeah, I don't have anything on Wednesday yet, so that should be good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, hey Lenny, we'll try to catch up with you. I don't know. Well, yeah, on Way Cool on Discord. And anybody listening, Chick and I guess we'll be hanging out with Dr. Lenny Time, and he's an interesting fellow, and he's done a lot of interesting stuff with like chemtrails and all kinds of cool stuff. Oh, and some house cleaning for me, everybody. A little disappointing thing. My debut on Truth Frequency Radio was supposed to be tomorrow, and it looks like it's been pushed out a week. Um, I'm really bummed out. And if you guys were looking forward to it, I understand, but it's not my call, so it's been pushed out a week. So hopefully we can get me on there 5 o'clock on Sundays, Truth Frequency Radio. Hopefully we can do this next week. It was something that's out of my control, so kind of bummed out. But that's how it goes.
Darn it, I guess it is what it is, but I know you were looking forward to getting that started.
Yeah, I was, because I was hoping to get like 3 shows going. You and I, then the one on Truth Frequency Radio, and then something I'd carve out for special like interviews or something like that, and kind of keep that kind of a floating thing. So he said 7 a.m. Pacific. So what is that? 10 a.m. Okay, yeah, that'll work for me if it works for you. It's kind of early for you, Chick, but if you're cool with it, then I'm cool with it.
Well, yeah, it's like at least when it's that early, I know I can still get plenty of stuff done later during business hours, so that works.
Okay, perfect. All right, 7 a.m. Pacific on Steampunk Radio, Lenny. I guess we're down with it. That'll be great. So sounds good. So we were
Awesome.
kind of all over the place today. No real theme this time.
Well, it's just if we had more information about this mysterious goings on with the sun, I definitely would have said it, but I'm still scouring for information because I think the Schumann resonance is being affected, and I think that's affecting the Mandela effect stuff, and it's just a kind of a domino effect, but there's just so little information out there. We're just kind of waiting to hear if somebody will say something or if some document will come out or something.
What if the Mandela effect was actually shifts were already being controlled? And every time we get to something like an alien invasion, or a sun's, what are those called? Those ejections from the sun that can destroy, a plasma ejection from the sun. They do a shift in order to save us. I mean, I wonder if that's just too far out there.
But from what I'm seeing, it's kind of like that, except it's just us. Like we're moved. The Mandela affected people. The other
Mhm.
people seem to be stuck here because, like, when you flip flop on timelines, they'll remember bad events that happened that we got to skip.
Yeah. Did you see that tweet I sent out? It was this guy on another channel, and I'll try to find the tweet real quick here. He was, and I said, this is a classic example of, here it is. I tweeted, this is a classic Mandela effect geo change. The video is interesting because this person has experienced the Mandela effect but doesn't know it. Fascinating study on people that don't know or are blind to the Mandela effect. And it was a find by Asian Smith. He found, it was the one about the Florida Marquise is the name of the channel, and it's the secret facility in Antarctica. And this guy's watching it. He had put a pin on it in like 2012 or something. Then he went to put a pin on it again in 2015, and he saw that it had moved, and it moved a great distance. And then whenever he apparently, they've got something in Google where you can kind of, where you put the pin, you can kind of move through time, and it started to show geo changes. And he's not looking at it through a Mandela effect lens. And I'm seeing a Mandela effect is what Google was recording. And this guy, he doesn't have the vocabulary for it or knows what it is apparently. So he was flabbergasted and he couldn't explain why, one, this secret facility had moved, and two, there was like a lake and there was some a mountain range and some other things around it. All of it had actually moved from like 2012 to 2015. It's pretty wild.
I think that he can even see it means that he's affected and doesn't know it, rather than unaffected and witnessing something. Because an unaffected person would say, oh, there's some explanation as to why this is, even if it's staring them in the face, because they're
Yeah.
just completely nope, nope, no when it comes to this.
Yeah, I think this guy's totally affected and he doesn't know he's affected. I think he's absolutely affected. 100%.
I hope he finds that out so that he has other people to talk to, kind of thing. Because if he brings that up to just the everyday person, they'll probably shut him down on it.
Well, I sent him a comment on his, explaining that it's a Mandela effect and that he was experiencing Mandela effect geo changes, and he actually gave me a thumbs up on my comment. So I don't know if he is just now discovering it or what, but he recognized what I said to him. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, definitely. If he's responding positively, then he knows something, or he's finding out, or he's open to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you saw that video, those changes were pretty startling. I mean, the whole thing moved. Things were moving.
Yep. Everything's moving. What's startling is people not seeing it and not getting upset by it.
I know, right? What's up with that? That's so bizarre. People that it's right in their face and they're like, "Oh, well, reality's changing and moving around. All right, what's for dinner?"
Or that doesn't make me money is the other good response. I'm like, okay, but you don't think it's a little bit important? Nope. In no way is it important that everything is changing.
Right, right. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, I guess we're gonna jump off, everybody. Um, like I said, sorry about tomorrow. I'll be on tomorrow. I'm going to be doing an interview with a music writer. Real excited, Nina Antonia. That's going to be tomorrow. I was going to start promoting that on. I think it's noon my time, East Coast time, 5 o'clock London. That's where she's at, and she was and still is a writer for a lot of really major magazines. And I saw some of her interviews with some rock legends like Johnny Thunders and all that. So that's going to be a real interesting interview tomorrow. So if you're into older rock and roll, punk rock, stuff like that, you'll be into this kind of interview. And it's kind of cool talking to somebody who lived through that kind of history. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow. And then I'll probably try to get a show in that was going to normally be my regular show, but I guess we'll wait till next week for that.
awesomeness.
Yep. All right. If unless you got something else, I guess we're gonna jump off.
Just I hope everybody's okay out there. I know that I'm all fatigued and I can't sleep properly and everything, so if I'm a little lackluster this episode, I apologize. But hopefully the shifts will steady out a bit and we'll be able to get into a more restful state of existence here. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I hope everyone's doing okay, and thank you so much for listening to the Lost and Found bin.
You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. If we faded for a second, I think I don't know if I'm still live. Okay. All right. Well, even if we're not live, we were jumping off anyway. So, see you guys next week. Take it easy.